Good evening and welcome to the first select board meeting of October 2020. And please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and as I said earlier, welcome. We will proceed with the meeting, starting with the minutes of the select board meeting for September 14th, which was the only meeting we held in September, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So the minutes are in your packets.
I move that we accept the minutes of September 14th as submitted.
And is there a second to that motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes for the September 14th, 2020 meeting as presented in the packet. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to warrants 13 and through 16. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. What's that?
Before you start, Dennis, I had to apologize. 15 and 16, I got overzealous. We're actually
Yeah.
only 3 weeks since the last meeting, so we don't have that second set.
Okay.
It's 13 and 14.
13 and 14 only.
Oh, phew.
13 and 14 will be it then.
I gotcha. So hang on one second while I get to it. Thank you, Bruce. You did it so quickly. I appreciate it. Warrants 11 and 12, right? Isn't that what we're talking about?
13 and 14.
Well, 13 and 14, I don't have.
They're in your packet.
They're in the packet? Okay. Thank you.
Of course, we got everything to work on my
I haven't used
laptop
it.
and it shut all my Chrome windows.
Gotcha. All right, friends. So 13, 14, we've already done. All right.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I'm sorry, because in the packet it says 13.
And 14.
13 and 14, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And so they're on the page immediately following the minutes.
Right. So I just want to make sure everybody's there with me. And then am I going to review, so this is related to what we're doing. I'm sorry, it's sort of confusing.
I
No,
think
it's
we
been a
already
couple
signed
weeks.
this one.
Yeah, so let me just hit some of the highlights. Sorry.
There we go.
Okay. Big $180,000, that's Kennebec County Treasurer. That's what we do. That's our stuff. We know how that goes. We've done that before.
First half payment?
First half,
First
yeah,
half, okay.
yeah. The 302,000, that's the regional school unit. 11,000 for the employee health. Is that the health insurance plan?
Yes.
And then I assume that the 1990 is like some sort of dues or something that we pay them regularly.
Maine Municipal.
Yeah, Maine Municipal Association.
Let's see.
Nice.
Yeah, that should be the last quarter of
Workers' comp insurance.
Yeah, good. And so those things, when you look at the packet, it just says what it is, workers' comp. But that's it. And then let's see here. Oh, here's one that is a big one down there, the U.S. Bank Corporate Trust. That is debt service. That's a payment.
Correct.
And on a bond, so those are the big ones on that.
And that was mostly on the dam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
principal and
Yep.
interest payments.
The Maranicook Dam.
Yes, the one that is done.
Okay, this was a pretty straightforward warrant to have a
Yes, sir.
motion on the, and 14 was a payroll.
Yes, 14 payroll, very normal, nothing crazy.
Do we need a motion since we've already approved it?
Let's go ahead.
We
and
usually
simply
do it as this sort of thing, so I'll do it. I would move to accept warrants 13 and 14 in the total amount of $560,972.16.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 13 and 14 in the total sum of $560,972.16. Is there any discussion or questions on the two warrants? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We will move on to Select Board Communications. Do any members of the Select Board wish to address the board and the public?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Chris. Go right ahead.
We're going to have trunk and treat, 5 o'clock at the fairgrounds. They'll park in the upper lot and we'll have them walk down past trunks. And then the Union Meeting House is going to have them walk through the woods for a pumpkin walk up to the other end of the parking lot, and then they can leave.
And that's on the 31st?
31st, from 5 to 6,
And a full moon.
and a full moon.
How is the best way for them to get information about that, Chris?
They should get in touch with me. My phone number and email is on the website.
Okay.
And I could use a couple more trunks.
Are these car trunks or trunks?
Any trunk you want to use. A car trunk, a truck trunk.
Because I was looking at your map and I couldn't figure out where we were going to put a car where you had them.
It looks like tables where Eric put these black lines. Those are vehicles.
Okay, so are they like parked off to the side of the
Yeah.
parking lot?
Well, they're on the way down. The parking lot's up here, and then on the way down and around the ball field, you're gonna have the vehicles.
Okay,
Where we normally would mow for overflow parking before we expanded the parking area.
okay,
That's where we'll have the vehicles.
perfect.
Do you need sweeteners to fill these trunks? Is that going to be an issue? Should we
You got
If
candy?
you wanna donate,
dropping off some candy corn at your house? or
if you wanna
something like
drop
that?
something off, I bought 200 bags of chips.
There you
So
go.
I'm just gonna set them out so nobody has to touch anything but one bag of chips.
If you have,
Yeah.
if you have any specific needs between now and then,
I'll let you know.
just let me know.
And I'm assuming that there's some guidance on everything's prepackaged or something of that nature.
We're talking to people, anybody that wants to have it. I've told them we want the treats set out so they're not
Fine.
pouring through.
All right, so
right,
it's
yeah.
got to be prepackaged.
Individual bags.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
And that's why I went with the chips, because I don't have to put them in bags.
They're in bags.
And you don't have to handle them to put them in bags.
Right.
Are there any other members of the board who wish to address the board or the public?
I just have things to say about other things in the agenda, so I'm good.
So we'll get there when we get there.
We will.
I just had one comment that I made to Ben personally the other day at the transfer station, but I've been driving around a little bit lately, and I just can't believe the immaculate condition of our cemeteries.
Great.
They are really pristine, and I think our sexton is doing a great job, and the volunteers who help him and the town crew that helps him are doing a great job, because cemeteries are a pretty good indicator of how your town is functioning, big picture wise.
Mhm.
If you're taking good care of them and they look good, tells me your town's doing pretty well.
Kudos to Ben and all the staff and cemetery committee that are all involved in that.
They're all-
Anybody else?
All very active.
Thank you. We'll move on to town staff reports. And Eric, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I'm going to hold my treasurer's report until the next meeting, being early in the month here, but I will give a brief town manager's report, starting with maintenance and infrastructure. We have just a few outstanding items at the fire station outside of the fire protection issues that are going to be addressed later in the meeting. We're down to the punch list. I mean, the appliances are in the kitchen, the heat pumps are all
They
in
actually fit
functioning.
the stove in.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but God
Well,
bless them.
I
Yeah.
can tell you if you want a quick aside.
Oh, we'll do it later. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
But I am curious, 'cause that's a good one. So gravel road paving has been scheduled, or not paving, shouldn't say that, grading has been scheduled for this month. We have an agreement with Cushing to provide that service. Regular roadside mowing is complete with the exception of a few town properties that were set aside in order to give the full range for wildlife to utilize them for their various purposes. So the town landfill and fairgrounds have not been mowed in order to give room for, field mice and such, as much time as possible to evacuate.
Carry those deer chicks.
The beach, we're closed for the season. Anybody that has kayaks or canoes down there, now's the time to start thinking about taking those away. The rental does go through November, but it's getting later in the season, so I want to remind people about that. And we just have a few items down there to pick up. We need to do the raking and a few small maintenance things. And that'll be done for the year. And then work is nearing completion on the Torsi Pond Dam. H.E. Callahan has done a great job on that, as they did on the Maranacook Dam. The concrete formwork came out very well. And the They ended up having to replace, I think I mentioned this last time, both of the piers that hold the dam face up fully. So that was a full replacement by the time it was all said and done. And that's Torcy Pond's dime for that piece. So I'm glad that we didn't just go with a small surface repair because it would not have been sufficient. The work that the town is undertaking that's going to be wrapped up, I think, this week. Again, the formwork looks great and they did fantastic work communicating. We are doing additional drainage and vegetation management around the structure. That's one of the reasons I think it had some failures. Not the only. The concrete had very little, if any, rebar. The piers had no rebar. And it was older concrete, from the 40s, so the mix is different. But in any event, if we keep vegetation and water away from that structure, just like our roads, it'll last a lot longer. Moving on to the transfer station, bold. I almost did bold caps, but I didn't want to give the wrong impression. We are now accepting plastic film at the transfer station. Again, anybody that has that stuff hoarded in their basement or in their cupboard, and it's bulging out and coming out of the cupboard, take it to the transfer station, bring it, put it in the separate container. It doesn't go in with the regular recycling. But plastic film includes shopping bags, saran wrap, food wraps, pellet bags, feed bags, anything that's like an HDPE type material is accepted. And if it's not, you can ask, or if you have a question, ask the staff. But very excited to have this back in place. It's been 6-7 months. And it was one of the things that I was most disappointed to see as a result of the coronavirus. Not being able to put that material into a proper waste stream.
Now, you said there's a separate container. I take it you're putting like a big box there for the current time?
So we're starting off with the large 50-gallon drum, 60-gallon drum that we had prior. If that isn't enough, we will be moving to a Gaylord is the industry term, but basically a large box.
I would suggest having a Gaylord because I have 6 50-gallon bags of that stuff that's all compressed down.
All right, okay.
And if I'm like that, I
She's
bet
gonna
other
fill up
people
your
are.
first bucket.
You're going to get hammered.
Well, that stuff will just drop right into the trailer, but yes, I'll talk to Karen about getting a bigger receptacle.
Yeah, I think once you announce that, you're gonna get a lot
Flood.
at once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
because we all want to get it out of where we're using before snow flies.
Yeah, but no, so I'm very excited about that
That
announcement.
is awesome.
So also with the transfer station, please bring in your bottles. We have been collecting them. Again, that was knocked out by the coronavirus, but came back online more quickly. We've been accepting them for about a month now. Still very willing to accept bottles and cans that people have returnables for the heating fund. We've done very well this year, but it's going to be a hard year for people, I think. So we want to be prepared to offer as much assistance as we can. And then don't forget that Sunday hours are done. It was a summer program and people loved it, but we've had a few people show up and call and say, well, why aren't you open? And it's no longer the summer, unfortunately. So we are done with that. I just wanted to make an announcement again.
You have it posted.
We have it posted
Oh, yeah.
and we had to make some changes on the website and things like that. But yeah, it's noticed. But not everybody goes every week or every 2 weeks even. I try to go once a month if I can get away with it. But
That's all I do.
in any event, moving on to administration and personnel, we're still looking for help for the fall season and also on an ongoing basis for road work and spring work and mowing and all those things. So if anybody has an interest or has knows someone who may be interested, we're looking for manual work. The town office will be closed for Indigenous Peoples Day on October 12th. And the last announcement is that absentee ballots are available at the town office. If you can wait a couple days before you come in, that would be helpful. We're flooded and swamped and overwhelmed right now because we have had more absentee ballot requests than we issued for the entire July vote. And we're going to have more and more and more coming in. And this is the first week you can vote at the town office. So staff are busy, but they're available. But any little bit of patience, a week or so would be very much appreciated. And that's my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Eric? quickly?
Just one, you're talking about need for basically manual work. Do the state prisons have work programs under supervision where people can get out and actually earn a little bit more than prison minimum wage and perform some functions that maybe town crew can't get to, and as long as it doesn't present union conflicts, if you're looking at street side pickup or painting buildings or that kind of thing, I know a lot of states do it, and maybe there's an opportunity for giving some people some work release experience and saving the town some money. All we
Yeah.
do is buy them lunch, basically.
I'll look into that. That's a good suggestion.
Thank you. That is. And I want to thank you for, being able to restore the plastic film. I think that's, we had that as a pretty important commitment earlier, and recommitting to it is great.
Yeah.
Moving on to boards, committees, commissions, and departments. In your packet and entered into the record is the Age-Friendly Committee minutes for August 12th, 2020. Thank you. And thank you to the Conservation Commission for their minutes of December 10, 2019, March 10, April 14th, May 6th, June 9th, and July 14th of 2020. The Library Board minutes of July 16th, 2020. My only comment would be committees are, volunteers and so forth. But if there's any opportunity for the select board to assist you or to find out how we can help you submit minutes to help keep the town updated on your activities on a more frequent basis, don't hesitate to make that suggestion. And that's not in any way meant as chastisement at all. It's just simply, we have volunteers, and it probably takes time to make sure that those are all written up and so on and so forth. But if we
May I
can
make a suggestion?
assist, that would be great. Go ahead,
Um,
please.
Being chair of the solid waste committee and doing the minutes, I often forget, and Eric, maybe you could ask Deb, when she sends out the reminders for articles for the messenger, if she could also ask for any minutes that have been gathered since the last month or since they were last submitted. It might just be a little reminder that could help us with that. I need a nudge, and I imagine others may.
Absolutely. That's a very good suggestion.
Great. We'll move on to old business, and we'll start with 2102, which is to discuss the local COVID-19 situation and response. The governor did extend her emergency situation starting, I think it was either late September or very early October, and it runs through
The 29th?
the 20, something like that.
29.
Yep, to 29. I'm expecting it will probably be extended again through the election, but that's just a bit of informational update that probably everybody already knows. And I'll turn it over to you, Eric, to discuss any town-specific items.
Yeah, just very briefly, we continue to do everything we can to keep things safe, and are continuing to expend those CARES funds that came through the state of Maine and the Keep Maine Healthy grant program. I had ordered just today a large amount of PPE and cleaning supplies for our hopefully small fall bump that seems to be on its way here and elsewhere in the country. We are keeping an eye on that prospect. I think everybody's optimistic that the same things that kept us healthy and safe this summer will continue to do so through the fall. But I am talking with Lee periodically about that issue, and other staff as well, about the fact that we might not go back to the somewhat draconian initial response, but that we'll be learning from the lessons that we've had over the summer, and doing what we can to keep people safe, but also maintain as much flow as possible. So we're just aware of that, and again, I appreciate the support and patience and cooperation of the public. People have done a very good job at the transfer station, in the town office, and in other public spaces of being safe.
Thank you. Any questions for Eric or comments? I mean, we're all aware of this at all times, and as a matter of fact, as we go further into this agenda tonight, we'll be talking about the voting location. Everything we do is sort of considered in the light of safety for citizens, and I just want people to know that we're, as a board, and through Eric and his staff, very committed to that. And so we're, as a result, also open to any suggestions or observations of things we can do better. Moving on to the fire station and library building project update, Ralph and Eric, I think, will probably go ahead and tell us a little bit of that tale.
Yeah, so earlier Ralph said he said, you're going to hear from somebody tomorrow. And I thought, great, Ralph knows that we're going to get a response from our builder about the prospective costs of the two items that are on the email that's in your packet. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Or fortunately, I guess we've got some other things in the fire here. But in any event, we still have unknowns with this project. And I wish we had more at this point. I can say that we've narrowed the potential need for fire suppression and fire protection down to two possible options, both of which are fairly unappealing in their cost. One is much more appealing in the functional nature, but until we have numbers, we don't necessarily know what option we want to take. In your packet is a proposal from Dirigo Engineering that meets the fire marshal's requirements for a challenge wall. That structure would be something that would be retrofitted to the existing building and addition and extend, I think, 3 feet above and wrap around 3 feet as well towards the building addition. And I think I used the word draconian earlier. This is, to me, a very drastic and unpalatable option.
So it's like invasive surgery versus something a little bit finer.
Exactly, yeah. We were hoping that we would be able to put a challenge wall around the sleeping quarters. And the fire marshal said, well, no, that's not what we want. We want to have the entire new addition partitioned off with a 6-inch concrete or masonry wall and a fire door. So we have requested, as discussed at the last meeting, we said we want two options. We want to know what it's going to cost to sprinkle. We want to know what we need for this firewall. And we've gotten through the design part of that, at least for the firewall. And we're getting prices for both of those things. Hopefully this week. It's been a long, drawn-out process, but even though we don't have numbers, I'm at least happy that we have direction and a couple of choices. And one thing I'd ask the board to discuss tonight, outside of numbers, is this idea of a heinous retrofit or sprinkling the whole building. Because I just, I'm having a hard time even seeing that that retrofit is an option, honestly. But that's just me, and I'll let Ralph.
The retrofit suggestion is coming from the engineers
Who got it?
in response to the fire marshal's office?
Yes, this was me telling them to sit down and talk and let us know what they were willing to do or could do or willing to accept to meet their requirements.
Yeah, I know where I am on this.
And that's what they
Let's
came
go ahead
back
and hear
with.
Ralph.
I talked with Lee at some length toward the middle of last week. As a scene setter, it seems to me like every time you go to the state and ask them, what do you think? The goalposts keep moving on us. But I get the sense after talking with the chief that if we can come up with a plan that meets their approval, that they are willing to basically bless the project and grandfather it out for maybe as much as 3 years, which would give us a chance to do a capital non-recurring funding process, which would allow us to maybe more aggressively sprinkle the building, which might not be a bad thing to do when you look at the total picture. So I would think that given our shrinking contingency fund and what I personally would like to see with some of those remaining dollars to go across the street to do some of the things that we think are important there,
Agreed.
would be to see if we could invest some minimal amount of dollars in the contingency pot remains to get a plan that can give us the blessing at the state level with that deferment, and then put it into our capital planning process. And, you know, we still have the building and we have the use that we had intended, but we don't get that financial impact hitting us right in the face right away, and we still have some financial flexibility with remaining project funds to do some of the other things that we think are important. Because I don't think we're going to get beyond that, no pun intended, firewall at the state level. I think
That's
we're going
almost
to have
cruel,
to do
Ralph.
something, and if we have to do it, let's do it in a fashion that maximizes the benefit to the entire building versus the new addition. And the chief was not, you know, I'm paraphrasing, I think I'm being fair here. The third option that we had discussed at our last meeting, which was, well, we're going to send the state a letter saying, we designed this to the code as it existed. And it's only 6 months past that. We're going to bless this. And if our CEO and fire chief bless it, then have a nice day. He's not comfortable with that, and I don't blame him. He has relationships that need to be maintained. The town has relationships that need to be maintained. So that, as much as I kind of like that idea, but I'm not going to be around to deal with the consequences. I think a kinder, gentler approach is in order, and I would look to invest. And we do have 2 plans, as Eric mentioned. I'm not sure either one of them would be the final result if we can get a 3-year hiatus with a more comprehensive plan. And it costs us minimal dollars to put that on paper. We get a blessing and a waiver letter. Then we're good to go. Because according to Lee, we're not planning on using those bunk rooms in the immediate future anyway. So we have a little bit of time to maybe do this, albeit with a hit, but with a hit that's manageable. So that's.
So my reaction right out of the gate is that I really would favor sprinkling over this very invasive process. And boy, I really like the option that you laid out.
I think it's on the table.
So I think we want to try to proceed with pursuing that letter, whether it's a 24 or 36 month or whatever.
I would look for 3 years if we can, because
Absolutely, absolutely.
the rough estimate that I'm hearing, and it's, how do we know?
Yeah.
Because every year it grows exponentially. But you're probably, to do the whole building, you're probably looking right now, today's dollars, at around $100,000, which doesn't seem cost prohibitive given the extent of the work. But
I think the town.
we need 3 years to get there, and if we're going to
over-
minimize the impact on the mill rate, given the other capital projects that we want to do. Case in point, maybe some pot of borrowed money for park and rec and enhancements there. Beginning to save from sand shed to minimize debt service. All of those things, and now all of a sudden, bang, here we are with another one. So if they'll buy 3 years, that's where I would, that's the target I would use.
Yep.
And as I say, I'm hearing this secondhand, but I think the source is pretty reliable. And that's what I would recommend that we do, so that we can bless this building and just say, oh, thank God it's over, and just make sure the budget committee's on board.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, absolutely.
Just real quick. I just want to say what an incredible effort has gone into everything else related to this gigantic renovation. And I know that the last couple of meetings, we seem to have been so able to drill down on the things that we wish were different or we think we're unhappy with. But I think at the end of the day, what we have is an absolute upgrade and what the people of Readfield have voted for. And so, you know, not to be a rainbow thrower or you know, like
We can use a
sprinkles.
rainbow right now.
That's it. But I feel like I feel like that's something that we need to keep in mind. You know, what we have is a tremendous asset. We have upgraded ourselves to a modern facility, and in addition to the library protection that has happened. So just to say that out loud. So if we have to go a little extra long, if we have to continue to do our best to do a good job, I think this board has shown through a lot of projects that if we do it right the first time, and we're able to do that still, then let's do that.
And I could say that when you look at protecting the entire building versus the addition, the bulk of our value in that building isn't the building. It's the $400,000 to $500,000 vehicles that are sitting in the unprotected part.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go down this road, let's say, take 3 years, do it, and protect the high-end stuff that, boy, you hate to think that it's dollar for dollar replaceable, but I think our policy does do that.
Well, it's a good point. Life and property are the two things that you're trying to protect, right? So I think that with that plan that you outlined, we could absolutely do that.
Good.
I have two questions. One, I noticed that the pavement was removed in front of part of the bay. Are we doing something with pavement?
Yes, that will be paved. It'll be paved up to, at the very least, the bollard that is in front of the
New bay?
new bay. And very likely, if we can come to an agreement on what the appropriate level is for that drive heading back, that moving further over will be paved as well. So,
So we're not going back along the building, but we would pave over to where that would be
yeah,
in the future.
exactly. And it might happen in multiple phases. That addition part, we did look at that and get a price for that, and it was going to be like $8,000 or $10,000. And we just said, with the way things are going right now, let's not do that. So the original asphalt called for cutting and replacing at a new grade. We've gotten to the point of cutting and we haven't replaced because the grade has actually changed. And so we need to finalize that grade and make sure that what we have now is what we want and what we want to keep it at. And then we can pave the front part and eventually pave that back part and get that taken care of as well.
And you're talking along the side of the bay.
Yeah, along the side of the bay is the part I'm referring to as the back part. And it would go back just the length of that, even though it would extend back toward the lower leach field area and the drainage area out back. The paved area would just be that 70 feet of the new bay adjacent.
Do you have another question?
Yes. Have we done an RFP yet for the stairs at the library?
We have not. I've been waiting for this to settle out, and I think that we're very close now where we can do that, knowing that if I'm reading the room right, that we're likely going to take a different tack with the fire station, freeing up some resources to direct towards the library. Also, the library is actively pursuing another grant application with the King Foundation, including this piece in that, the fire escape and other improvements in that application. So it's time. We have a couple different options for funding. If the grant comes through, great. We can put that money back towards the sprinkler system, but if not, we have it available to use. So I think that we're in a position where either way, we have the ability to proceed. And so now I feel comfortable doing that.
Let's make sure you're reading the room right. I mean, we want to do a
Yeah,
motion
yeah,
on,
yeah.
we want to do a motion on this, I don't think, because we like to make sure that on a big engineered project like this, that we keep
Of
different
course. Yeah.
things open. But just everybody in looking at this on a consensus basis that sprinkling the building and making some sort of grandfathered arrangement over 3 years makes sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so good. You've read the room quite correctly.
It's hard with the masks on, but I did a shot.
I do smile behind this
That's
quite a
right.
bit, actually. Yeah, maybe I should have something that lights up. Moving on to 2126, discussing the ongoing regional broadband project. Is there an update on that?
Yes. The technical subcommittee continues to meet. They have reviewed one application from one service provider, the scope of which was not, as expected, did not really include Readfield. We are working with them to find a proposal that does include Readfield. And I'm working to try to impress upon the WKLCBA the value of fiber to the home for the region. And the fact that a municipally owned network is probably the most cost-effective solution for everybody, whether they are looking at grant dollars to help pay for that, or whether they're looking for bonding or other sources to pay for the proposal. It's the most fair in terms of equity. Long-term, the value accrues to the residents and the users of that service, as opposed to a private for-profit organization. And the control of the services is much greater. So I'm pushing to make that a bigger part of the discussion for that organization, with some success. I think the towns of Mount Vernon and Vienna are very interested in that, and I've seen some signs from Fayette. They may be seeing the light on that as well. It's a new idea for a lot of people, and one that is fairly new for the country, but is happening throughout the country and in the state of Maine. So we're trying to pull together information around that and present that option in part because it's the best solution for Readfield, but I honestly feel it's the best solution for the region. So,
Well,
that's-
yeah, I
that's the
mean,
update.
other towns that go to some intermediate step are going to outstrip that service in 2 to 3 years, and they're going to say, what's next? We can't do what they're doing next door.
Right. Well, and the other issue is that, some towns will probably get a proposal is that proposal public now?
Quasi.
Okay, anyway, so they may get a proposal that gives them fiber, but it's coming through a for-profit corporation.
Right.
And it's coming with various stipulations about cost, connection costs, pole rental costs, fees the town will be responsible for versus fees the consumer will be responsible for. So it's not as simple as they might have thought it was going to be. But Ralph was first, and then I have a comment.
No, that's okay. It just seems to me, as creeping up the curve here, that the organizations that have been successful have done it at the municipal level because of the inertia at the state and federal level. And there have been some, I guess, there's some evidence of some pretty good performance in that regard. I'm wondering if on a parallel track for our organization, whether or not we ought to be taking some initial steps to form a utility district, whether it's just Readfield alone, or whether perhaps we get a buy-in for towns that maybe have some level of connectivity, and we form our own management group so that we control the process, and the revenues that are generated by this process come back to the town to offset the expense. And I don't think that's something I've heard at this point. Maybe it's premature, but I would like to know how the heck we do it, and maybe we ought to set this up now so that we are better positioned when the time comes, because it sure sounds to me like we're going to do this.
It's a great observation.
And the preferred option would be that we control it so that the taxpayers don't get beaten to death by private companies that raise and lower rates and offer different options at different times. And you've got a hodgepodge of service versus a town that controls the process and makes the rules.
I'm definitely with you on that. My feeling, however, is, and this comes back to the whole COVID thing, is I feel we haven't had enough public participation. And so I think that needs to be, and I'm willing to lead on this and say that's the direction we should go. I don't mind saying that in a public setting at all. But I do think we want to broaden the input that we have at this point. And so I see us probably through the budget process, putting together money for the legal costs to launch that kind of entity, if that's the direction we want to go in.
Would
And
MMA
be doing that through, doing that in gathering through the budget process and perhaps a separate public hearing, information from voters.
We'll probably be ahead of that curve. That's where we're looking to be.
Good.
So a couple things. Eric's been in touch with a group in Portland that's a nonprofit that helps communities do this. And he has just been finishing up other tasks as we've been talking about tonight. So he's getting ready to put more time into that, and I've offered assistance. I know you have, and so has Ralph. Wayne did a nice survey. They've made it available to us, but we'll probably make our own, but I'm going to look to get that out in the next week, an online survey, and we'll just start spreading the word and leave it open, but we'll start collecting some better data that way and get more people involved. Eric, I think in the proposal that they were discussing, someone asked the question about would this company be willing to overbuild the network in Readfield, and the answer was no, not with our money, but if you'd like to spend your own money, we'd be happy to design and build you a system anytime you'd like. So there is a corporation out there who is ready and willing to come and do that for us, and will give us pricing. Over what period of time, we don't know exactly. And we don't want pricing from just one company.
No.
We want it from multiple sources. So there are a bunch of irons that are moving into the fire right now. And one thing just of note that came in an email today, were several sites, I don't know if there were 6 or 7 different towns, but the town of Brunswick has gone to a fiber to the home project, and it was built by GWI, and 125 MPS up and down is $55 a month. So that's anywhere from 8 to 4 times what people are paying for now in terms of speed. I pay for, we're paying $95 a month at my house, and we get 38.
Is that a town-owned utility, though?
No, I think
No, it must
they
be
did it.
GWI.
But that's still,
That's an interesting,
it's still a fantastic price. It's,
Sure it
it's,
is.
not-
it is, but my question would be is why aren't they giving them a gig? If the capacity is there to do that. It's just a pricing,
Right.
it's almost like a price gouging methodology that cable companies have used for years where you pay.
You want more, then we'll
It's-
charge you for it.
Right. It actually exists.
Right,
Okay.
but what they have found, we have found out, is that people are typically using about 7. And so to pay for 100 and you're only using 7 to maybe 30 is really wasteful of your own personal money. It does, and I guess there is a different drop to the house cost when you get into that 100 megabit.
The equipment, the end user equipment, and the equipment in the shed, the utility shed has to be upgraded to do that. So there is a cost to it. But I mean, I see your point, Bruce, that the idea of doing a tiered price structure for a fiber network where you're dealing with light that can be split and then split again, it really is kind of arbitrary. And that point did come up. And that is, I think, one of the other values of a municipal network is that you can give people as much capacity as they can handle or willing to pay for. And that's the with the end user equipment. So somebody that wants, say, 125 up and down could be willing to pay for equipment that can support that. And if somebody wants a gig, they might have to pay a little bit extra. But it would be commensurate with the equipment costs and not just a monthly surcharge, basically. So there's a ton of options out there. And it is actually exciting to start seeing some of this stuff in action in other places and learning more about it.
But my only remark to that is, let's think big.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yes.
And I do have a smile on.
Right, but the point I was trying to make is that there are companies out there doing this in towns in Maine.
Yep.
And it is not extraordinarily expensive.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're going to bank on, is that we're going to build
Right.
this and make it affordable. And with that kind of service, you could have 5 or 6 people in your house doing Zoom meetings and watching videos, and everybody would be at snap your finger speed. And so the sooner we can get that here, we're looking at probably 2 years if we move really quickly. That would be terrific.
And you would have to have, if you were to choose to go the municipal control route, you would have to have that in place first.
Yeah, and there are a number of different ways, and Ralph, maybe you and I can work on that. I've often talked about the Acadia Disposal District, created by special legislation in the state to assess. But I think the idea of having a separate entity that assesses towns like an RSU would is probably very unpalatable for many of these smaller towns, including, I think a lot of people in Readfield would probably object to that. I object to the
I would have
RSU
big problems with that.
process often because it feels so unfair, but then again, it's the cost of a good service. But in any event, there's a lot of different models that we need to look at, and a utility district could be something that doesn't have taxing authority.
There's got to be a template out there, somebody that's done this.
Absolutely.
That
And we
would
wanna
fit
do
for
that.
us, that we could cherry pick.
And we want to do that concurrently with getting an engineering plan and estimates so that they come together at the same time.
Yeah.
Because that makes us move along more quickly.
That's all.
I just want to say that the next step, I think, for us is probably to start looking for or working with a consultant to help with that. I bring that up because that's, I think, where we need to go next, aside from the public outreach
Yes.
information process. Because we're not going to have the resources necessarily to ask the
Or the
right
expertise.
questions. But it's going to cost money, so I wanted to just bring that up and ask what the board felt about that, or felt about me requesting some quotes from people to do that work for us.
Do we have any reserve left in what we spent so far on this process that we could use as seed money to get us started down that road?
We have the money that's in the pot right now for the services that are covered under the grants that we've received through the WKL-CBA. But as far as independent work,
Yeah.
and I'm going to push and see what I can squeeze out of our current WCLBA
Okay, yeah.
arrangement.
Yeah.
But
It's going to be hard to spike that money out when it's communal.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not going to hurt to start identifying what the consulting cost would be.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to collect information and proposals for consulting work in relation to fiber to the home.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the town manager to collect information and consulting quotes and assorted information that would be of the same nature. So there's no cost in this particular motion. Is there any discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to the select board retreat. Everybody who was, I forgot to ask about public input. Did we have people joining us via Zoom tonight, Bill? Grace. And I forgot to ask if anybody from the public wanted to speak. And so if that person is still there, and if she would like to address us, I would be more than happy to hear anything that any member of the public has to state. So I'm not hearing anything. And Bill, if you get a message or something that later on that somebody wants to do that, please let me know. We'll move on to the select board retreat. The package is in, or the report, excuse me, is in your is in your packet. Thank you for some guidance on just the final drafting of it. Basically, what we would do tonight is just look at the report. I would identify the goals that we had set and then accept these as our goals for the forthcoming year to work on. Some of them are for this year, some of them are multi-year goals. And so the goals are to review and revise draft governance documents as needed, to continue our multi-year effort to bring high-quality broadband service to town, to finalize a solar energy plan for town facilities, to further investigate the church road sidewalk approaches, to set budgetary and structure direction regarding parks and recreation, to support a 2-year comprehensive plan update, to determine the salt and sand shed repair or replacement plan, and to review the pension plan to improve that plan for employee participation and retention. Everybody was at the retreat. You all participated and were very, very helpful, I think, in producing these goals. And the report goes on to talk about target dates and different resources that are being used and personal resources. Any other comments?
Great job putting it together. Thank you for taking the notes and writing the report.
Yep.
I think this sort of thing is really important because I have, as a teacher, been a part of a lot of things that never seem to have a sense of accomplishment, where you continue to meet and you work and you leave and you're not even sure that you did anything, but you talked a lot and that sort of stuff. And I think that these goals help us stay focused and in process, and they are a great vision of what can happen when we all share the same ideas about putting forth the best for the town. So for my part, I just want to say I really like the retreat. I know it seems weird. I've never said that in any other setting, but in this one, it is a good experience because you get to talk to each other, see what's important to you, and share those thoughts. So thank you, colleagues, for that.
Well, and thank you for that note. And I will say for anybody who's watching, in the retreat report is a look back at the previous year and some qualification on goals. We don't expect necessarily to always accomplish 100%. Some things get continued and so forth. And so that's characterized a little bit in the report for the previous year. So do we want to accept these goals as our goals moving forward?
Yes, do you need a motion?
I think we ought to do that.
I'll make a motion to accept the select board retreat document that contains our goals for the coming year and years forward.
Second?
And so that motion and second on the accepting this report is to basically endorse the goals, is what we'll be doing with this vote. So is there any discussion?
Just one more aside. I think what makes it doable as opposed to an exercise, as Dennis referred to, is the fact we set up in the context of a 1-year time frame. We put a finite time frame on trying to get these things done. So it kind of puts us all under the gun, so to speak, to perform. Mm-hmm. And without that annual component, I think it would be just another exercise. But this is very valuable, and the time frame makes it viable.
And I also think, I mean, we have some big ideas in here, but I do really believe that we don't bite off more than we can chew, because we certainly could have found other things to add.
We left some things by the wayside.
We did. Okay, I think we have not gone to the vote yet, so all in favor? Okay, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I really appreciated everybody's participation. So next we'll move on to a public hearing. And we do know we have one member of the public who is listening. And this public hearing may not actually be necessary by law, but it's to conduct a public hearing on the potential use of the Elfon Athletic Center for the November 3rd, 2020 election. And basically, we have been, this kind of relates back to our earlier remarks on COVID. We have been investigating and hoping to find a place. This has been a very adequate and well used facility for voting in the past. But when you start trying to put 6 or 8 feet between voting stations and keeping your poll workers safe, and knowing that you will probably have exceptional turnout per presidential year, you want to do something a little bit different. So I would take any remarks on the potential use of the Alphon Athletic Center for November 3rd in this public hearing, which is now open, from either the board or the public. Or any characterization from staff.
I think it's a great idea. I'm assuming that this has been approved by the powers that be at Kents Hill School.
Yes, and on a characterization note, they have been exceptional partners in this, and I am grateful for this opportunity. They have a wonderful facility. It exceeds all of our needs. They met with us. We talked about all the specifics, ins, outs, literally, figuratively, all of that, and they're just being wonderful hosts, and I think they deserve a lot of thanks for helping us out with this.
I'm thrilled that we have this location available to us. We can't use our public school gyms because school is happening during those times. And that's a safety thing in terms of allowing public into the school while students are there. And then there's the COVID issue, and there are parking issues. My understanding is at Kents Hill School that we're going to have that entire part of the facility.
Yes.
There is more than adequate parking. It's well off the street. It's very easy to get in and out of. And it allows for all the workers that need to be there in a socially distanced manner, as well as letting the public in, so the line shouldn't be long, especially with all the absentee ballots we've been asked to provide. So, and Kents Hill, this is a huge step for Kents Hill School. They have signs up at every entrance that they are shut down to protect the PAC. And, no one can go on campus for any reason other than business with the school. So this is a big leap for them, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, we were stopped at the door when we went to go ask to meet with the facilities director, and so they are taking this very seriously. But Chris Cheney, the headmaster, had said this is our responsibility. This is our civic responsibility to help out with this. So they firmly believe in the same things you've been discussing. So.
And it's on the same road as the town office. It's just 2 miles away, so it's not a particularly huge shift for people. So it should work out well. It's very well lit. You're there after dark.
I think we'll want to make sure that we adequately promote it in terms of the location being changed, and that as much as possible. I mean, we may even do temporary signage, voting here, that kind of thing.
Facebook.
It's going on Facebook right now,
It's
Bruce.
going on Facebook right now.
Well, you haven't voted yet, Dennis. Yeah.
After we prove it.
I'm
Yeah,
waiting.
don't anticipate things.
I'm waiting.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Are there any other board members who wish to comment?
Well, I'd just like to say briefly that I think it's important because of the shadows that have been cast over the vote by mail option to have a safe, viable public place for people to go and vote in person. And this certainly addresses that need, so that if anyone has reservations about their ballot counting if they do it by mail, this will be a viable option that will afford them a safe place to go and cast their vote. And that's really important. And thanks to the school for making this facility available to us, because otherwise we couldn't do it.
Thank you. Then we'll close this public hearing. We'll move on to new business, and the first order of new business is 21033, and it's to consider the Alphon Athletic Center as the location for the November 3rd, 2020 election. We just closed the public hearing. I think we had a lot of consensus that we really are very appreciative of Kents Hill School to offer this facility, and there was some guidance out of that public hearing on signage and and promotion. So with that in mind, I would like to make a motion that we set the Elfon Athletic Center as the location for the November 3rd, 2020 general election.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Hit the button.
Bam. Posted.
I'll set this out here. Everybody should sign that before they leave.
Yes.
Hit the button. It's on there, man.
And we'll just leave that
almost
over there,
scary,
okay,
isn't it?
Catherine?
That's fine.
Hey, wait, I changed my mind.
I know it.
Okay.
You're gonna have a ballot box.
So
Eric?
21034. You know, you have the meeting ending at 6:30. I'm sure you didn't, oh, I see. Excuse me. You do have it ending at 8:20. Let's proceed with considering the purchase of a replacement for the small maintenance truck. We did receive an email on this. However, we haven't discussed it publicly. There's an issue with a small maintenance truck, a repair cost issue, and that indicates we need to replace this vehicle. So Eric, why don't you give us an update on this and tell us a little bit about what your thinking is on it? And we do have funds set aside for this.
Yeah, so every few years, we've been purchasing either from state surplus or a local dealership, a small pickup truck, usually extended cab, usually four-wheel drive, to serve our cemetery and roadside needs that are less intense, where we don't need a full dump truck. This last one lasted just over a year and has had frame rot issues that won't allow it to get a sticker. So over the past couple of months, we've been looking for a replacement and using just town vehicles or using private vehicles and paying mileage for the staff, which is not an ideal situation. We've done it before. We can continue doing that for a period of time. However, we need to have a reliable small utility truck to meet our very modest maintenance needs. And so with the fall approaching, we wanted to get that taken care of. There was a couple weeks ago one that came up that I briefly considered just getting, but it would have been much more than what would have been allowable. So I did request, or at least request a consideration from the chair and vice chair about what they thought about that, and they said, just wait. And that was the right decision, to just wait. And so there are always more vehicles coming up. We have typically paid $4,000 to $5,000 for these vehicles. State surplus no longer has anything that will even come close to taking a sticker for $4,000 to $5,000. Most dealerships don't have anything that's reliable for less than 10. And so my request is that we have authorization to expand up to $15,000 for this coming purchase to replace the truck. I think that we can find something in that range. Sorry, Catherine, that's sideways, isn't it? Would you like to look at this one?
No, I got it. I'm
Okay,
good.
all right.
In my old one, before it closed out, I had them all turned, but
Oh, okay, all right, all right. Well, so anyway, we do save for this on an annual basis. We have an equipment reserve that is intended to cover this vehicle and other expenditures related to equipment. This happened sooner than we wanted, but when you are buying equipment that is old, trucks for $5,000, it is something of a crapshoot. And as I said, the state is holding on to their stuff for dear life at this point and not turning anything over that isn't used up. And other people are doing the same. So that's where we're at. Again, the financial side of this, we do have the money available. I think that the $10,000 to $15,000 range is reasonable. We may even be able to pick up something with a small 8-foot plow that could be a good supplement. But we'll be delivering.
How much is available?
Right now,
51,000?
in that account, we have We have 51,000 and change. If we were to purchase a vehicle at the full $15,000, that would leave $36,000 in the pot. And we're replenishing that to the tune of $15,000 a year. That being said, there are a number of pieces of equipment that fall into that. And with this, in the past, we budgeted about $2,000 to $3,000 annually for replacement of this pickup truck. That's too low. We can't continue on with that level. So this budget cycle, we'll be looking at increasing the level of savings needed overall for our maintenance department to cover the fact that we from an operational perspective, we can't continue to buy $5,000 trucks.
Well, you might even actually get a little bit more time out of a vehicle too. We
Yeah.
were planning to replace that in 2021, right?
We were, yes.
So we're kind of almost in that fiscal situation anyhow. So
Isn't this our 2021 fiscal year?
this is 21 fiscal year, but we hadn't,
The
we would have
original
purchased it in the fall.
2019,
Yeah.
I think is when we purchased it in
Go ahead.
2019, so it was going to be 2
I'm
years.
looking at the amount in aggregate for this line item for capital equipment. We have 36,595 in reserve. We budgeted 15,000. We got $51,000 there. When do you get to a point where you stop shopping for secondhand equipment and use that line for incremental lease purchase payments for a new vehicle?
Yeah, and
Good point.
To follow up on that, when we discussed bringing this onto the agenda, either in a special meeting or a regular meeting, one of the questions I had is, we do want to look at this on our capital planning basis because, we may go in a different direction with this. If we, for example, decide on a solar project for town, maybe we should be buying an electric vehicle. And maybe that's an option we should be looking at. I don't think we should be doing that immediately, but that might be in the 3-year horizon
Part of
or
a
something of that
5-year plan.
nature. So I think it's time to think a little bit outside the box. The other thing I would just give as a quick observation is I wouldn't put my daughters in a $4,000 or $5,000 vehicle. And,
If
I
we're
think
doing
it's,
this
I
every
think
2
it's,
years,
I don't think it's, terribly unsafe driving around town, but,
No.
the whole thing of breaking down where there isn't a good pullover, just things
Well,
of that
it costs staff
nature.
time and
it's
Yeah.
a cliche, but
Yeah.
it's
You get what you pay
borderline
for.
penny wise, pound foolish.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sometimes you buy a new vehicle and you save a lot of money because you're not putting anything into it for a few years.
Yeah.
You hope, if it's not a Monday.
And this is intended to be a smaller vehicle that
Yeah,
does
it's a
all the
utility.
go-around stuff.
Yeah.
I think for the current time, if we buy something, even if it was 20,000 in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, that'll get us through hopefully 2 or 3 years and be safe and adequate. That will allow the budget committee and the select board to do an adequate
Capital plan.
capital plan. And at that time, it might be the right time to buy a new truck or to buy one that's 1 or 2 years old to save that initial depreciation, but,
And you wouldn't have exhausted your balance
right.
at that.
Yeah.
But to get something, I would rather see something that lasts, the trucks we've had in the past have lasted 3 years. I think we've done this 3 times. This one was the time that it lasted not very long. So,
People are becoming more frugal and the market is compressed, isn't it, basically? The bargains aren't out there.
It seems to be, and honestly, the state had been a good resource for us, and we used to get trucks that had, modest wear, but they just don't have that anymore.
Well, and if we invest well in the kind of mileage that goes on these vehicles, which is not that heavy,
right.
if our capital direction in a couple of years is slightly different, we might have something with some trade value. We certainly would not have it with a 5,000 sticker to
We
sticker
have nothing on
time
this
thing.
current one.
Scrap
from year to
value.
year, yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
So,
So,
Catherine, when you discussed 15 to 20, that you wouldn't be uncomfortable with that, I'm with you on that. I certainly don't want to get into a situation where, something is 17.5 or whatever, and we're just not looking at it, it's the right vehicle. I don't want to go all outdoors on it because it is the second utility vehicle, but just kind of knowing pricing and so on and so forth. And Chris, you might want to chime in on this. I think the 20 ceiling is probably a better ceiling.
Well, you know, the more you pay for it, the less you're gonna have to put into it, but that's why I go for a not fancy new one, because you're not gonna put anything into it for a couple, 3 years. And you don't have to pay a lot of money for a new one anymore.
Especially if it's a lease purchase with zero interest.
So am I hearing two different directions here, which one is just buy it in one chunk at 20, or the other is to talk about maybe redirecting our interest in a lease purchase?
I mean,
I'm kind of hearing two different.
you're not even talking four-wheel drive, are you?
We typically do four-wheel drive and extended cab because it has the versatility
Yeah.
that's there for a crew of people raking leaves and all of the, the associated equipment that we can haul a small trailer. That's been a good model for us. I think it'd be good to keep that. I think it would be hard for us to find something that's new that would be in the price range. But then again, if it's a lease purchase, it changes things. I'm a little bit hesitant to do a lease purchase. I kind of like the idea of one more go around with a better vehicle that'll last us, firmly 3 years and have a resale value at the end of that. And then we can talk about the idea of a lease purchase or electric or whatever future directions we might want to take.
When is our next select board meeting? 2 weeks?
2
It
weeks.
is in 2 weeks.
So I'm going to make a motion, which anyone does not have to second, but I would ask the town manager to get quotes on a used vehicle up to $20,000 and on a new vehicle without the bells and whistles, but that meets his requirements of a crew cab and four-wheel drive, and bring it back to our next meeting where we could make a decision.
Eric, in terms of practicality of providing the vehicle for staff and so forth, will that be doable?
We've gone this far. I think that we would be fine extending. And I think that staff would probably, although they're eager to get something, would appreciate the idea of a more reliable vehicle that has less downtime. So I think that that definitely doable. And Catherine, you can instruct me anytime. You don't have to ask politely. I work for you all, so please
So deferential.
tell me what to do.
I'll second Catherine's.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to have the town manager for the next meeting gather quotes for both lease purchase and outright purchase of a ceiling of $20,000. Is there any discussion on that motion?
That wasn't my exact motion.
Please
It was
correct it
for,
then.
I think, Kristen, what I had was a used vehicle up to 20,000 or a lease purchase. I didn't put a limit on that one.
Okay,
But I said not the bells and whistle version, but
Yeah.
including the four-wheel drive and the crew cab.
and I understood
basic
it that
model.
way.
Okay.
So I've been adequately recaptured your.
That's, I just wanted to make clear, because it might be 25,000 or it might be 31,000, but
Oh, we would expect a lease purchase vehicle to be more than $20,000 probably.
right. You never know, though.
But the annualized cost
I
would be
would think
less.
over 5 years, you're going to be significantly under even at the,
There could be a 2018 sitting out there just waiting to be
Yeah.
snatched up somewhere.
combined.
Well, we've been looking, so this certainly gives us some more options. When you do a search for $10,000 or $15,000 on a dealership page, you get like one hit and it says,
Yeah.
it doesn't have a sticker, but you can, but we'll work with you. So, yeah.
We'll work with you. You know that language.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion directed to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. That was less discussion than I thought it was going to be. We'll move on to discussing the comprehensive plan committee appointment process. In your packet is the comprehensive plan update in committee, and basically it outlined the committee. We've already started.
Same memo.
Yeah, it's the same memo that we had last time. And basically, we've had a couple of committees already say who they would like to see be a part of the comprehensive plan. We've had applicants for, what, 5 applicants for the public?
I'd say we've had 3 firm and a couple of I'm interested, but I don't want to step on toes. So I think that there could be opportunity for more than the 3 that were originally suggested in the memo. Because the comp plan committees oftentimes have, 11 members or sometimes more, because different people are doing different things at different times. But in any event, yes, that's right, Bruce. We've had a lot of interest, and I'm hoping to get more.
So what I wanted to do in talking about the appointment process is, instead of bringing forward appointments this meeting, I thought we would deal with these in the second meeting in October and maybe talk about a little bit. This particular committee is going to be very helpful in determining the direction of the town, if you will, through its comprehensive plan. And it's going to be a 2-year commitment. So our committee appointments tend to be fairly pro forma. Somebody has volunteered for something. We really want to encourage that volunteerism. I think with the comprehensive plan, we want to be a little bit more specific in our interviewing process, and a little bit more diligent, if you will. I have no problem with saying we could have more public members, or we could stick with the number of public members we have and add alternates. But I also have no problem with, if there's a number of people beyond the number of slots that we have, making a good faith effort at interviewing appropriately and saying no to some people. And, that doesn't mean that there are no in terms of not being connected to the comprehensive plan, but because there'll be committee meetings that people can participate in and hearings and so on and so forth. But we want to be very diligent, I think, in that process. So it's a different kind of interview, and I wanted to get the reaction of this board and thoughts on that.
I'll react. I think we should keep 9 as we considered originally. I think there was a lot of good reason for that. I have no problem having several alternates who would serve if they could attend but not be voting. And then if somebody were to be absent, then that person could take in their place. So that's my point on that. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying about the interview process. I think if we have 10 people who want to apply for 3 positions, then we listen to all 10 and pick 3, and maybe 2 alternates or 3 alternates. I think getting it too big makes it unwieldy, and people will, we've had committees with 17 before and they fall apart. And so I just...
Well, I think it's enough work, too, that the alternates, just like we do with the planning board, give the comprehensive plan committee the ability to meet a quorum.
Yes.
And when you divide out work into perhaps subcommittees, certainly alternates can be very helpful there, too. So I don't have a problem with that. We might actually revisit this. Let's see what we have first, and then maybe we'll revisit this and add alternates as an additional action after adding the 3 people, the public members. We will have other members come before us. And by the way, I'm smiling now. We do need to discuss who on this select board would be a member of the comprehensive.
I know why he's smiling, because he's saying, I've only got, a half a year left here, so.
But on top of all that, so I guess my question is, to be thoughtful in that interview process, is there any additional information you feel that we need to seek when we do those interviews? Or do you want me to, and all of us, to just put some thought to that and maybe jot down a question that we might have and just, at least, and the thing that's important is to be consistent through all of the interviews.
I like that idea, and we could submit them to Eric, and then Eric could publish them to all of us,
Okay,
right?
Good.
Because we don't want to have a meeting
Yes.
via email.
Yep, that sounds
Yeah.
great, yeah.
And I
Pick one
also,
that I like and forward it along.
that's right. It feels like we're giving, I mean, this committee is, I refer to it as a legacy committee. You are having a
good way of doing
lasting,
it.
you're having a lasting effect on at least the direction of the town for 10 years, more obviously, but the idea that it's, as my friend Bruce likes to say, how the sausage is made. And it's work that is important. It may be arduous at times, but it is very valuable in sort of helping shape the future. So
And
thank you.
just one last point on that.
Yeah.
You're talking about all the virtues of the committee. It is intensely public. This process is very much based around public involvement and engagement. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges of this committee at this present time, is to gather public input that's valuable in this pandemic time. And it's not an easy time for us to do this. We need to do it now, unfortunately, to meet our statutory requirements. This is a leadership role to help engage and bring in your fellow citizens. So that's a big part of this as well. Because it's leadership, but it's also engagement.
So if you have a particular question or thought that should be included in the interview process, send it to Eric. We'll scrub it down. Maybe Eric and I will just chat and scrub it down so that, there's no duplication. And then we'll just send that out to everybody.
First one I'd ask them is, have you read the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, and the answer to that could be, I haven't read it in depth, but I've really perused it and am familiar with what
But
a
you're familiar
comprehensive
with
plan is and what the intent is, because it is such a huge document.
But if you've never read it,
You can't-
that's a
yeah.
different approach than someone who has looked at it.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah,
Familiarity might be a good one.
Yeah.
Good question, yeah.
Given the diverse makeup of this group as it's going to be constructed, I think strong leadership is going to be hugely important. And I would hope that if we are the initiating body, that we could have some level of control in determining who is going to be the chair. Because you're going to need a strong leader to control a flow and massage personalities, because it's going to be an interesting group, and it should be. But if we don't have some input as to who's going to be driving the bus, I think we've got a little trouble right out of the gate if we put this new group together and say, okay, you guys select the chair. Because they're going to be brand new. They obviously, I would assume they're going to be longtime town members who have a feeling for what the town has done and what it should. But that said, you got 9 or 10 people or whatever the size of that group is, sitting there saying, okay, well, who is it? So some part of our consideration ought to be, if we can, finding a willing nominee who will serve as chair.
I've done a good job agreeing with you this evening. I'm going to disagree with you on
You're
that.
not going to agree with me now.
I just entrust the members of this committee. I think
Okay.
if we interview well with the public members, we'll
It'll
get
take care
people
of
who are
itself.
committed. And the other thing is,
Okay.
not that the board, this committee isn't stacked, but it represents different people who are already volunteers in
And I
town.
think perhaps one of the
So-
questions should be, would you be willing to lead the group?
Well, please do submit that.
And I guess
consider it submitted.
And I mean, not everybody would answer yes to that, but maybe that would give us some indication, and other fellow future board member, committee members, some idea of who a potential leader might be. That's a good question.
are we interviewing members that are coming from the named committees, or are we just taking who they are putting forth?
I'm fine taking who they are coming forth, but I think we should interview them.
Okay, I agree. And I guess just my input to the public on this is that I think you need to be aware of two qualities that we're not looking for, in my opinion. If you're a person who's very meek and sits back and everyone else does the talking, and you don't really want to publicly say a lot, that's great. There are places for you. To me, this would not be the place, because we need people who can provide input and push other people to speak as well, to gather as much information as possible. And then the flip side of that is we don't want someone to come who's going to grandstand and dominate every meeting and be loud and too boisterous and too pushy. So we need something in between, and, you know, different personalities fit into different committees in different ways. And I think here you need to be someone who's not afraid to speak up. You don't always have to, but you need to participate, but not overly, because there are going to be 9 people, which is a lot of opinions to consider.
But you don't want it to be one person's opinion.
Right.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that's very good guidance.
And so, you know, just people's comfort level should be considered.
Yeah.
You know,
And as Eric said, this is a very public committee.
and you don't want someone to come forward with their very best intentions and then realize later that, oh my goodness, I have to speak a lot. And I wasn't planning on that. So I think we need to let them know that, you know, there is an expectation.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I made a note here that I'll probably throw in an interview question if I can, which is, what is your style of communication? Something similar to that. I think that if we could get a question like that, that could help get to your point. I mean, it's hard, that's one of those questions that people don't always answer fully, or because they don't really necessarily recognize what their communication style is. But I think it's a fair question, or something like it could help get to your point. But yeah.
Eric, without prodding, without identifying anybody in any committee, do we have a couple committees that still need to be prodded to have somebody sent?
We do.
Okay,
And that's
so you'll
part of my
prod.
Follow-up. I'd sent prior to the last meeting, or just after, I can't remember which, just
And
after.
you can route the committee chair to me if they want to just get some more,
Yeah,
bounce some conversation on it, what it might involve.
I'll
and so
put that in my follow-up email.
Okay, great.
that
And I'm
offer
guessing
out
we
there.
as the select board is one of those committees.
We, as a select board, is one of those committees. Do we want to discuss this tonight, or do we want to think about it? And
Is there anybody who's just dying to volunteer?
When does it start?
It starts immediately,
November.
November, but I mean, obviously November, December are light months, and I've already discussed that with KP Cog. We want to be ready to hit the ground running in January. 12 months of intense work in order to prepare for a potential or for a really necessary review and consideration at town meeting in June of 2022. That time frame that's on the memo, I'm planning on working from the side to help meet that timeline, because I think that's one of the critical components of this process. These things can drag on. I don't think it should. It would be a detriment to the town if it did. If I have a role in this, it will be staff support and helping to move the process along. So I've been telling people that ask, this is an 18-month commitment. The appointment will be for 2 years, just out of an abundance of caution. But I'm hoping and expecting that we can get this done in 18 months.
With the bulk being in
And,
January to
and
December.
when we say intense work, I do want to just state that it is work that staff provides assistance on, that KV Cog provides assistance on. So it's intense work in terms of making sure you listen to public input, participate, and do your homework reading more than anything else, I
And
would
attend
say.
meetings.
And attend
regularly.
meetings
Yeah.
with whatever frequency is appropriate. And I'm assuming that this, like a budget committee, may have more frequency at some point and less frequency at other points.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be subcommittees. There's no question that there'll be some of that going on. So everybody will have a lot of opportunity to participate in different ways.
So it's supported work is what I wanted to make sure was said.
Yeah, absolutely. We have
so
some staff support in the town manager and also in KV Cog. But as the board may have realized by now, this is a big thing for me. I'm excited to be involved. So,
And so, did that answer your piqued interest in joining us?
Well, I would like to know, but I cannot commit. I just can't give myself to it. I'm interested, but I cannot commit to it. Because I'd rather not do a lot of different things kind of halfway. I'd rather prefer. So I can't do it. That's really what I have to say.
Do other people, is there anybody else who's interested, or do we want to just give it some more thought?
I'm in a similar position with Dennis. I could really commit to the second half of the year. The first half of the year would be very difficult. And depending on how broadband goes, I really am putting my efforts there and in solid waste.
use
So
all your
it's,
bandwidth.
Well, I mean, the other thing we can think about is that we might change our representation on the board. I'm not sure that that's a good thing, but it might be something of, let me just give you a for instance, that somebody joins the committee and then maybe in their second year, they become an alternate and another select board member goes in. Something of that nature. So, because we do all have different changing terms and so forth. And, you know, okay?
Well, the bulk of the work is coming right up.
There's a good piece coming up.
yep.
All right. Well, thanks for considering that anyway.
Yep.
Ralph is about to speak.
Go ahead, Ralph.
He's sighing heavily.
It's important. I'm going to get way out ahead of myself saying that, first of all, planning is not my strong suit. And I don't want to be perceived as shrinking a responsibility here, being the person who might have the time. But the fact is that I'm not going to run again. And this process is going to go beyond where I would be when it's done. So the concept of perhaps splitting the load, if you will, as undesirable as it might be, I could reconcile myself to that. But I think you and I have some big work we've got coming up. That's not going to be an easy process given what we've got going on. Not to say that couldn't do both, but I would prefer to focus on the one assigned task we have for the next year and not have to step up for this. But in the absence of another warm breathing body, I would grudgingly do it.
Okay, well, I mean, let's not make a decision here. I'm also considering it as well, but I'm also considering if it's something where I complete this year, can I be an alternate and then the board names somebody new and maybe I fade out or something of that
At
nature.
the very least, that would make it explicit.
No, I have an interest in this. I will state for the record that I have served on other ad hoc committees and so forth that the town has launched as a select board representative. And I don't really think it's appropriate necessarily for the select board representative to be the chair. So I would like to see some alternate leadership. So
Absolutely.
if I were to do this, I would not want to chair it.
My sentiments are exactly the same.
Because I don't think it should be in the control of the select board.
No,
actually.
Yeah, agreed.
This is
Yeah.
a planning function, but the select board should have
We're
representation
sending
and
a
input.
member. We're sending a member.
And
So-
Ralph, just to correct you, you will be finishing your term when the plan's being approved.
If all goes according to plan
Oh, it will.
and Eric's timeline. But,
With Eric keeping
I'm
this
committed.
committee on
I'm
task.
committed.
look,
Yeah.
Anything can
I've
happen.
been a witness to one process already that hasn't gone exactly according to plan, so,
Yep.
and I've been around that barn a few times, so.
I hear you.
I just, and as I say, I'm not a planner. I
So do-
just am not.
So do we have all thoughts on the table on that? And
Yes.
so we'll proceed with starting our appointments next month. Is there any other business or upcoming meeting or future agenda items that you want to talk about really quickly? We removed that page, by the way, you probably noticed, and because we're going to put in the goals. And we also had a couple things that were midterm, like talk to state representatives and things of that nature, that we can bring up and add those back in, but they were just sitting there for years. Didn't make a lot of sense to just keep them there. So we'll put the goals there.
Oh, thank you.
And if there's anything else.
Are we going over 21036?
Oh, yeah, we should certainly need to do that, don't we?
I can do a quick introduction. Bruce,
thank
if
you.
you'd like. Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So we've, for the.
What's happening here is, for the public, if you're watching, is I missed an agenda item and started to close the meeting with wise words of wisdom. And the wise words of wisdom is always listen to everybody else. So go ahead, Eric.
Sure, yeah.
We're on conducting a review of the 2009 comprehensive plan goals as they relate to sort of a check-in process that we do annually.
Absolutely. So we've done this several times in my 5 years working with the town. It's one of the ways that we, just like our select board retreats, keep up to date, keep involved, engaged with the priorities that were set by the town through the comprehensive plan. And so these items represent the goals that were established, and then the action items that were taken, some notes when they were completed or when they're expected to be completed. And what I've done is highlighted the areas that have changed significantly or even somewhat modestly since the last time. And I'm happy to say that we've been able to check off a few boxes as far as completion, make some good progress in a few of these areas and bring a few of these back to life. But most importantly, I think that this is an assessment of the results of the 2009 comprehensive plan. So I think this is a great jumping off point for the board to review perhaps one last time before this process gets handed off to the comp plan committee. It doesn't mean that the board shouldn't be reviewing these goals maybe one more time during that process, but I think this is just a way to initiate and remind us all of where we've been, what the comp plan looks like, and what really ultimately the goals that come out of it. This is what we're going to be working with. This is what we'll be developing or redeveloping to put ourselves forward as a community. And that's my summary of this document. And I don't know if you want to go through it line by line, but I think a discussion, a short one at least, is in order.
I think what I would do with the permission of the board is to go through it through the 4 different groups, which is short-term, midterm, long-term, and ongoing, and just pick anything out that you would like to discuss. Certainly the items that are highlighted and what you would see is under notes, they look kind of grayed. I'm sure they were probably colored highlighted in the original Excel spreadsheet. Is that right, Eric?
Yes, that's right.
So for example, number 2 is highlighted.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with the short-term goals, and there were 9 of those, which you see on page 1 and 2, with a couple of them highlighted. And so if there's any input or thoughts on either the highlighted ones or any of the others that you have a question on, now is the time to do that.
I'm impressed that all 9 of them have either been completed or are considered annual and ongoing. That means that we've been addressing them, they've come up, they've been discussed, or they've been done. And since they were short-term back in 2009, that's a good thing.
Yeah, because we looked at all of them in 2019.
Yeah, and actually the one that we needed to pretty much actualize that was not completed at that time, I believe, was the traffic and parking ordinance revision.
That's right.
And so that was
Done that.
done. So I think unless there are other remarks on short term, we can move on to the midterms, and there's 8 of those, and one of those is highlighted, which is to build a sidewalk, and there's no plans for this as of 2020. And that sidewalk is the completion of the sidewalk.
Park and ride lot.
Park and
Oh, the park and ride
Yeah,
lot.
it's easy to read that differently, but yes, that's the park and ride lot.
Oh, okay. We're just not going to do that.
Assuming you set up a park and ride lot, is there a regional transportation system that will accommodate people parking? So it's just a commuter carpooling lot is what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yep.
Because the Kennebec County
Explorer.
group doesn't run buses.
No,
They don't have a transit system.
not like,
So we're
Yeah.
not doing that.
Well, so that was back in 2012. It was kind of decided that wasn't something that we were going to do, and nothing's changed since
And
then.
especially
So-
if people
Yeah.
are going to, the trend is going to be more and more working from home, maybe park and ride isn't a priority anymore.
Entirely possible, yeah.
Now, I think we might have gone to a different scale here because we have, like, the third one says it was complete in 2012, but we didn't use the word complete, whereas previously we had been putting in complete. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think I should have probably modified those
And
as
so
well.
we might want to
Yeah.
just update that.
Yep.
But again, this has a lot of the same features of the short term. Most of these have been turned into annual, or they are completed goals with, I think it's just 2 of them, 3 of them are still ongoing.
Yeah, the one
So
that
again, that's
yeah,
impressive.
the one that I thought was most interesting was the idea of controlling motorized traffic on the lakes. That's a tough one. I think I understand why it's on there, and it shows that there was broad input in this process. But I look at that and say, man, good luck, But it keeps coming up, the idea of that some kind of regulation on the lakes between
Unless you have
boats and-
constables that are sworn
Well,
to
exactly,
enforce things
yeah.
on the water, and that's a huge expense. It's going to be impossible to do that
Yeah.
because the state doesn't have the resources
Same thing with
to do it.
moorings. That's another one that comes up a lot, is we
Right.
want to regulate moorings on the lakes, and it's a
And
hard
that's
one.
probably, the state's going to have to bless it, and you're going to have to create a harbor management commission to do it. And you're going to need the equivalent of an A2 survey on the water to make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, but what we have in town that people will, again, consider when they're going through the comp plan is you have some wonderful lake associations.
Yes. Yep.
And that's the best way for those sorts of things to resolve themselves, is that by having large membership and discussing those things, you find out what's important and people participate
If
themselves
they're
in monitoring.
statutorily enabled with town oversight, you could do that.
Well, I think they're doing it just out of the goodness and decency of their hearts.
But they have no regulatory authority. So when you get
Correct.
crosswise with somebody who's putting a mooring in the water where you don't want it, they have no enforcement capacity whatsoever.
Right. And so you try to keep yourself from getting to that point. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that. I think they're very effective associations. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
they have to rely on whatever the state provides because we don't have any local authority
Right.
when things go south.
Yeah.
okay. Any other comments on midterm items? We'll move on to long-term items. And there are 4 of those
That are all complete.
that are all complete.
I did just update the notes on those primarily to reflect the status.
Okay.
And this is a great jumping off point for the committee getting started, is looking at what was completed and what the goals are and
Yeah.
how attainable things are. When you set them short, mid, and long term, what's the possibility they can get done in 10 years?
And so ongoing really is about things that are being operationalized or given procedure. And so that's actually the largest number of items, for 17 items in those particular goals. The does anyone want to speak to any of them?
Number 4, which is labeled complete, I would flag that for future monitoring, because it sounds like you have 2 municipalities that are working on long-term plans. We're not sure what they are. So what they may or may not decide could have an impact on recreational use and potential land use. I would keep that one in play just to monitor, because it's a huge amount of land in a very strategic area, and it doesn't look like we really have a seat at the table in terms of making those determinations as to what the use would be.
Are you on item 4, which is
Yeah, I'm
board and
confused.
committee
Consider,
descriptions?
this is goal,
You're in the long term,
long-term.
Oh.
Oh,
Yes.
we
We went to ongoing, I see, okay.
but that's
We
okay.
can go back. I just,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
okay.
I got the same place.
I think the thing about, for example, we just talked a little bit about the Park and Go, which was really something that really wasn't seen as moving forward quite a number of years ago. So everything is always monitored. The idea still exists in the comprehensive plan. And so it never goes off the checklist.
As long as it's
It's always,
under the land use umbrella, we're kind of covered.
do you mean the Augusta Water District?
no, I'm
in
talking about,
particular?
I'm talking about the comprehensive plan. If the goal is on the comprehensive plan and we said it's done, or it's an item we're not going to pursue, for example, then it doesn't disappear entirely. It stays here. We don't take anything off this list.
Right, but the next
Okay.
plan committee can take it off or keep it in.
Another select board might come in with different thoughts
Yeah.
on it and say, no, we should have moorings and we should have, water polo rules and so on and so forth.
We need constables on the water.
You want to
Yeah.
extend the meeting?
I don't really want to, but I think probably I'll take a motion to extend it 10
I
minutes.
move that we extend it 10 minutes.
Second,
Been moved and seconded to extend the meeting by 10 minutes. All in favor? Thank you. I don't think we'll need all that time.
I agree.
Okay, so now we'll move on to ongoing.
My bad.
You're not bad.
No. Having a little directional problem with my computer here suddenly.
We both are. It's-
I did not have this
Well, you have to download it to be able to
earlier.
twist it, and I just didn't do that.
Okay, so ongoing, like I said, that's the largest number of things that are being operationalized or otherwise developed. For example, number 2 is, support for the Economic Development Committee, which really is been recast as the Readfield Enterprise Fund formed in 2018. And that we may do a more dedicated committee at some point or expand the scope of the enterprise fund.
We actually loaned money out.
We actually have loaned money out. So do I have any thoughts or remarks on any of the items, particularly the highlighted ones?
No, I think it was great that Eric went through and gave us the updates. I know I read them all and I was like, hey, yeah, we've been doing pretty good. And I would be happy with putting a revised date on all of these of tonight. I don't know if anyone else is comfortable with that, but
Of a last review date, you mean?
yes, making the last review
Yeah.
date.
It's really not, we're not really revising anything, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
Review
added
date.
at the back, Catherine, your suggestion of definitions for the acronyms, which I know Bruce supports
Oh, yes,
as well.
yes. Definitions of acronyms is very helpful.
Right, what does this mean?
So let's update this as being revised. I don't think we need to do a vote or anything
Review.
like that on this, because we did the review. And I appreciate everybody thoughtfully looking at this. This will be really interesting going forward too, to see what develops from the new committee that's going to be working on this. And so we'll be connecting with that, I'm sure. And by the way, getting back to the comprehensive plan, there is an update clause in there that they update us occasionally, quarterly or something like that.
Quarterly, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yep, that's the recommendation. I think it might be
right,
somewhat flexible. You're all pretty good
Right,
about that, but.
right.
Yep.
Okay, with that, do we have any
Motion
other
to
business to
adjourn?
come before the board? And a motion to adjourn is on the floor.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor of adjournment? Thank you.